Jeez. How many people are even going to watch this anymore? Oh, why? What's going on, guys? It's your boy BURGZ here from the Casual Athlete, back at it again to talk to you about round 5 tips. And despite my intro, I have got a smile on my face. Apologies if my voice is a little bit dry too. Had a pretty big Easter weekend in me. But as we always do, guys, let's take a look at how I did last week. And I tell you what, I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, as we can see right here. I drank the Roosters Kool-Aid, and that wasn't good for me. 2 out of 8 tips, guys, and I've got to tell you, it's probably the worst week of tipping that I've had in possibly 5 years of tipping. Currently sitting at tipping roughly around 4.2 correct tips a week, which is not good in terms of my chances of winning competitions, but we will soldier on. That is the attitude that we have here at the Casual Athlete. Lucky to get the Rabbitohs correct. They didn't look great in that game. Cowboys, they were done from the outset. Once they got that try, the Broncos, in the first 5 minutes, I pretty much knew it was over. I had a weird feeling all day that the Cowboys were going to lose, and I didn't end up changing my tip just because I wanted to back my boys home. The Seagulls, damn, they should have gotten that win. Wow, what a terrible game for them to drop. Moving on. Then I tipped the Titans. Probably a stupid one for me. I just thought the ins of Jaden Campbell and Fafita would lift them to a certain level, but it just didn't come up trumps. Glad to say I got the Warriors tip correct as well, although I was a little bit overpriced with the margin there. The Raiders, well, they led 18-0, and I basically switched it off thinking, this could be they'll run riot over the Sharks, and basically they didn't score another point for a long period of time in that game. And Parramatta, they just got pipped at the post, and I did say that this game was going to be a bit close. I did not think, though, that the Tigers would come down to CommBank and win it. Again, a game where Para were the big favourites in that game, and it's one that they probably should have won. Let's move on to some more positive news where we aren't talking about my tips. We're talking about other people's tips and them doing really well. It's the TCA Tipping Comp, which you are still able to join if you haven't already. The link is in the description, guys. I will leave it down there for you. We do have a new leader in the comp. It is Jigglypuff 12, little Pokemon reference there. Congratulations to Jordan, who has risen all the way up to the top of the ladder there. And I am currently sitting at 92nd position. We've had a few changes of lead in recent weeks. Benny Backshot still in the picture there. Can see Bryce at Dogs for Life, who also led the comp at one stage. It's looking pretty tight up the top. I've got to be struggling to get all the way back up there. But guys, make sure you keep putting in your tips and letting me know how you're going each week down in the comments. Now, before we get into my tips for round 5, guys, just a reminder to make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week just for you guys. If you want to join our fantasy and tipping comps, the link is in the description, as I previously spoke about. Now, let's get into the video. Alrighty, guys, hoping to do a bit better this week. The first game of round 5 takes us down to Amy Park, where we have the Storm taking on the Brisbane Broncos. And the Storm, well, last week's bye gave them a chance to get their injured players a little bit of time off. And the Broncos got a great win for them and their season, considering their injury toll at the moment against my competition-leading Cowboys. Cowboys no longer leading the competition. Sad face. And with this game, I think we all know the story. The Broncos got a win last year, breaking a 14-game losing streak to the Storm. And I've got to tell you, at this point in time, this one's particularly difficult for me to tip. I think last week the Storm, they got a week off, so there's not much to go on there. They put up an impressive fight against the Knights with a pretty understrength team. And then the Broncos last week, I think the refereeing decisions at the early in stages of the game got them off to a really good start, and they were hard to pin back. But the Cowboys didn't throw too much at them and were only down by about 8 at halftime. So I still held out hope. The Broncos just ended up running away with it in the end. Adam Reynolds being back in the team helped them so much. His game management is just so clear to see. The way he helps that team move the ball and then also finish sets off quite well. There was a lot of times where the ball would go to Adam Reynolds on the last tackle. We wouldn't be able to put much pressure on him. And when you don't put pressure on Reynolds, he gives him time to think and kick the ball where he wants to kick it. And a lot of times he found grass or the corner or put Scott Drinkwater under a lot of pressure. And Drinkwater, I've got to say, had a shocking game as a result of it. Put up a couple of bombs too, which our back three had a lot of trouble with. Not so sure that'll happen with the Storm. I don't really see Pappenhausen having very similar issues with the bomb, just because Drinkwater, I know, has a bit of an issue with it, and I feel like teams are going to target that moving forward. Um, I like the Storm in this one. I do think they'll get Joe Chan back. They should get Munster back as well. Nelson Asofa Solomona is ready to come back. Then we've also got Christian Welch coming back. They've got a lot of ins into this side. It should give them a nice boost being back down at home. Whereas the Broncos, they're still going to be waiting on Brendan Piakura coming back until round 8, and Payne Haas and Reece Walsh will still be out for this game as well. So got to go the Storm in this one, guys. 1-12. Moving on to Friday's games now, guys, and we have the Dogs taking on the Roosters at Accor Stadium. In the last 10 games between these two teams, the Roosters have won 9 out of the last 10 games against the Dogs, and it has been a bit of a riot in recent years. The only win for the Dogs coming with that Trent Barrett maiden victory as Dogs coach back in 2022. I've got to say, with the Dogs, they've been resilient this year, and it's not a word that I would normally associate with the Dogs. And last week, I think I drank a bit of Roosters Kool-Aid, as I thought that, they just down Penrith just because Nathan Cleary was out. I should have looked a little bit more into the record that Penrith have without Cleary. They tend to galvanise, and everyone steps up knowing that Nathan's out of the side. In this game, the Dogs will be without Jacob Preston, though, an impressive young player, and played with a fractured jaw for the whole second half last week. I thought he was carted off in that big tackle, and wasn't going to return, but he came out in the second half and still played with that fractured jaw. He'll be out till about round 11. Curtis Morin will also be out for a couple of games after a dangerous throw. I just wasn't impressed with what I saw from the Roosters. I think their attack lacked a lot of direction again. I think Sandon Smith somehow really straightened them up when he was in the team against the Rabbitohs. And then with the Roosters, they kept doing the side-to-side stuff. And yeah, Teddy was good again, but I just think that they're not really settled on their second rowers as well. And, whether it be Tupanua or Wong or Nat Butcher or Crichton, they're going to be funneling those guys in and out, it seems. I'm hearing that Crichton is probably going to start instead of Tupanua this week. Make your minds up on whether that's a good decision or not. But they do have the wood on Canterbury in this game. And coming off a loss, I do think the Roosters are a better bet here. I'm going to go with the Roosters, 1-12. Our other Friday night game takes us to McDonald Jones Stadium, where we've got the Knights taking on the Dragons. And I've got to say, over the last 10 games between these two teams, the Dragons have actually won 6 out of those 10 games. In this game, though, O'Brien has dropped the axe on one of his halves again. Tyson Gamble being moved out of the side this week in favour of Jackson Hastings, who played reserve grade last week. Dane Gagai has also been named to start as well after missing last week's game. Then we also have a change at hooker. We've got Jaden Brayley coming into the starting side with Phoenix Crossland moving back to the bench. And the one change for the Dragons is Michael Molo will come onto the bench instead of Hame Sele. One thing I've got to say is that the Knights have started this season pretty poorly. They seem to be getting teams starts in games, and then they also seem to be getting unlucky, for lack of a better word. Not sure what it is. I do believe that the Knights, though, had a lot of players overperform last year, and now they're playing at least to their normal level. And for me, that is just where they should be. I'm not really expecting anything out of the Knights. A couple of comments last week saying I'm the Knights hater. I'm not. I just don't think that their side is as good as they're trumped up to be, or where they finished last year. With the Dragons, though, they overperformed for me last week. Kyle Flanagan had an absolute blinder. Lomax still playing quite well as well, although keep hearing that he wants to leave, and that he won't be playing at the club in 2025 as well. So, yeah, that for me is just insane. I think he's playing really well on the wing, but maybe doesn't respect the fact that they're putting on the wing, or thinks he's better than that. I don't know what's going on there with Zach Lomax, but he wants out, and he's going to be a pretty good pickup for another team if they do pick him up. I'm hearing a lot of Parramatta on that one as well. In this game, I do like the Knights. They're back at home. They're won from the last 4 games. And I think the Dragons, Manly played very poorly, especially some of their big players like Turbo. So it gave them a lot of ball. It gave them a lot of opportunity. I just don't know if the Knights are going to do that again for the 5th game in a row. Yeah, I think the Knights get the win in this one, 1-12. The first Saturday game is the Rabbitohs taking on the Warriors at a core stadium. And in the last 10 games between these two teams, the Rabbitohs have won 9 out of the last 10 games against the Warriors. Few changes coming into the sides this week. Alex Johnston is out for a few weeks with a hamstring injury. So Isaac Thompson will come into the side after not playing this year. So that is his first game for the 2024 season. Then on the Warriors side of things, big in for them as they get Chance Nickel Clockstad back. And that is massive for them. Couple of outs, though, for them with Luke Metcalf breaking his tibia, having surgery on that. He will be out for a long period on the back of that. So Tamare Martin, very experienced 5'8", comes into the side. And then we've also got Marata Niokore starting at second row instead of Kurt Capewell there. Tome Ale and Freddie Lussick coming onto the bench. In this game, it's very interesting. I think that the Rabbitohs were not impressive last week, and they just snuck home with a win against the Dogs and had a lot go their way. The Warriors, on the other hand, pretty clinical for most of the game, but managed to let the Knights back into the game a little bit later. It's two teams that aren't really at top flight at the moment, not in form, and those can be the most 50-50 of them all. I do like in the Rabbitohs' favour this game being in Sydney, but the Warriors have just got such a dominating forward pack. It's really hard for me to go against them. I'm not sure how much Kurt Capewell adds to the side, with Nuikore giving that bit of a bit more punch than Kurt Capewell. It's a tough one for me, but I'm actually going to tip the Warriors in this one. They are the favourites just, but I do think that they are putting together a little bit more of a game structure, a game style, whereas the Rabbitohs, while Whiten got 2 tries last week, I'm not really seeing a whole lot outside of that. Dean Hawkins' kicking game isn't much better than Lachlan Ilias's, and Cody Walker's not really helping in the kicking department either. So got to go the Warriors in this one. I think Sean Johnson will kick him to death. 1-12. The next Saturday game takes us to Four Pines Park, where we have the Seagulls taking on the Panthers. Now, in the last 10 games between these two teams, it is the Panthers who have the better record, winning 9-1. Probably expected considering the dominance of Penrith in the last 4-5 years or so. In this game, the outs still continue for Manly. Matt Lodge is about a couple of weeks away, along with Jason Saab. And then, as we know, on the Panthers side of things, Cleary will also be out. The ins, however, are big. We've got James Fisher-Harris lining up alongside Leota back in the front row. Huge boost for Penrith. In this game, it's a bit difficult. I think Manly were poor last week. I really got to say that Tom Trbojevic, I don't know if I've ever seen him drop the ball that much. Apparently his record is 5 errors in one game. Last week he made 4. So you got to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Yes, they had an off night. Are they probably going to do it again back-to-back weeks? No. I liked the look of Manly prior to that game, but they've become to be a bit of a trick for me. In this one, it's looking pretty even, but back at home, I kind of like Manly. It's a difficult place to go to for Penrith as well, especially Brad Schneider. Although he did play very well last week, I'd like to see him under the pressure of a local Manly crowd. Although they did play away last week and it had no effect on him either. So, I mean, completely wrong on that one. But, yeah, and I tipped against Penrith last week. So, are they going to make me do it again? Do I doubt them again? Far out. Yes, I do. I'm going to go with the Seagulls in this game. 1-12. Our Saturday night game is at Suncorp Stadium this week, where we've got the Dolphins ruling the Roosters for the night against the Tigers. Now, there is no record in the last 10 games because these two teams haven't played 10 games against each other. However, the only win for each team in this fixture was the Tigers last year, where Api Coruscant kicked it from 40 metres out, nearly on the sideline to win the game. I remember I had a lot of skin in that game last year, as I will probably have a lot of skin in this game as well. I think the outs for both sides are pretty formal, although got to say, Lachlan Galvin is out of this game, and that is a big blow for the Tigers, considering how well he has been playing over the last couple of weeks, really showing no fear as this kid comes in and just destroys team. He cut Blaze Taulagi in half last week, and it couldn't really go with him, to tell you the truth. And he's basically half the reason that the Tigers won that game, even though he spent 10 minutes in the sin bin as well. In this one, though, I like the Dolphins. It's going to be the first time I'm tipping them this year, although I probably expected them to have a worse year last year. They are top of the table at the moment. A couple of easy fixtures, though, but we'll see where they end up at the end of the season. They're just unchanged, and I really like their back line at the moment. Jack Bostock really showing that he can be a good player, along with Herbie Farnworth and Avarillo as the centers are doing really well. With the hammer, I'm finding it very interesting every week. He seems to be doing not a lot for about 60 minutes of the game, and then at around the 60-minute mark, he tends to do something spectacular, and it's one play, and it earns him a bunch of either super coach or fantasy points. The other point that I've got to make for this one is my rookie watch is going off, and Latu Fainu has been named on the bench for the Tigers to make his debut this week. Exciting young prospect, another 18-year-old. Wow, these players, they're absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to see what the Tigers are going to be like in a couple of years' time. Yeah, I'm going to stick with the Dolphins in this one. I just think Galvin was bringing them a lot, and him being out this week, even though Coruscant has probably been their best player this year, I think it'll take a little bit out of them. I don't know when the last time is that they won 3 in a row. Maybe tell me down in the comments. But I'm going to go the Dolphins in this one to get a bit of revenge after last year's loss to them, 13 plus. Our first Sunday game for the weekend, we are back at North Queensland, where we have the Cowboys taking on the Titans, another Queensland derby, back-to-back weeks for both these teams. And in the last 10 games between these two teams, the Cowboys have the better record, winning 6 out of those last 10 games. And I've got to say, the ins are not really anything to note, to tell you the truth. There's new faces on both wings for the Titans, where we have Harley Smith-Shields and Jojo Fafita coming onto the wings, with Sami playing through that injury last week. He is out, and then also Khan Pereira has been dropped as well. For this game, both teams are coming off a loss, so it's really difficult for me to see a team that's going to be fired up versus not fired up, although you could probably argue that the Titans, considering they haven't gotten a win to start this year, should be most fired up. They had a pretty decent start to the game last week, the Titans, and then it just fell away again, and I was hopeful. I tipped them, and they just, they lost all momentum, and it's really, I can't put my finger on what's happening, because it's not, the coach is new. You'd expect a new culture to come in. Tino being missing is huge. And I may have underestimated last week how big that was, but right now it's all about when they're going to get their first win. They're kind of like the Tigers from last year. It's like, when's it going to happen? Do I think it's going to happen this week? Probably not. The Cowboys are unchanged from last week. Todd Payton basically said that we wouldn't have beaten the Townsville Blackhawks last week if we had have put in that performance against them. So I kind of agree with him. We dropped the ball a lot. Just gave the Broncos way too much opportunity, and you can't do that to a quality side, even without some of their best players. In this one, I expect us to bounce back. We're back at home, and I expect us to get a big win over the Titans, 13 plus. The last game of round 5 takes us down to GIO Stadium, where we have the Raiders taking on the Eels. In the last 10 games between these two teams, it is split 5-5, so straight down the middle there. The changes for both teams, we have Hosking coming out of the team and Mariota being put into the back row, and then Parramatta are largely unchanged, aside from Wiremu Greg making his first appearance into the starting 17. I'm not too sure how this one's going to shape up. I mean, the Raiders, they dogged me last week. They were my lock of the week, as you all know, and I haven't named one this week. That's because it's the Parramatta Eels. I'm actually liking the Eels in this game, although if you're a fantasy or Supercoach expert, you will know that Lachlan Galvin had a great game last week against Blaze Taulagi, so expect Ethan Strange to maybe do the same. I think Blaze needs to work on his tackling ability, as is with all young halves. Mitchell Moses, I remember, was very much the same. He couldn't really tackle when he first came into the game, so absolute turnstile there. He's going to need a bit of help. from a guy like Madison, who is going to be next to him this week. Yeah, I like Parramatta. I think they'll bounce back in this game and take it to the Raiders. They're my lock of the week. Let's go Parramatta, 1-12. So that is it for the video this week, guys. Let me know what you think about my tips down in the comments section below. If you haven't already, please make sure that you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you on the next one.